The direct deposit hits on a Thursday morning. The notification pops up on the phone. The same little buzz that has been arriving twice a month for years. There's a calm routine to it now. Open the banking app. Watch the balance jump. Pause for a second, the way someone pauses at a mirror before leaving the house. Then the movements begin. A fixed amount slides into the high-yield savings account. A smaller amount goes toward the retirement plan. The bills are already scheduled. Rent, utilities, the car that is always paid in full. Because carrying a balance feels like failure. The app closes. The phone goes face down. There is a small, private satisfaction. This is what a responsible adult looks like. Nothing dramatic, nothing reckless. Everything is under control. Hours later, nothing about that morning will stand out. The day will be about meetings, replies, tasks finished and forgotten. But at some point, usually late, the app opens again, almost without thinking. The same numbers appear, the same categories, the same neat separation between spending and savings. It all looks calm on the screen. It all feels safe. And somehow, that safety keeps coming with the same quiet, unasked question. If everything is done right, why does anything really change? There is a life that collects compliments. Friends call it disciplined. Parents call it sensible. Managers call it dependable. It shows up to work on time, even early, because being late feels like disrespect. It knows the exact day each bill is due. It keeps a spreadsheet or an app that tracks every recurring payment. Streaming, phone, insurance, a gym membership that is used just enough to avoid guilt. On weekends, it says no to expensive plans without embarrassment. I'm trying to be smart with money right now. There's pride in that sentence. It sounds mature. It sounds like someone who has learned from other people's mistakes. The credit card is paid off every month. The idea of paying interest to buy sneakers or a dinner feels almost offensive. The car is used until it actually needs to be replaced, not just because a newer model looks better. There is a small emergency fund. Not huge, but enough to handle a flat tire or a medical copay without a panic attack. At work, the conversation about raises is always polite. More money is nice. But the real badge of honor is consistency. Job security sounds better than new opportunity. A stable paycheck, a predictable schedule, a familiar set of tasks. It may be stressful, but it is known stress. There is a retirement account because everyone said there should be one. A small percentage of each paycheck drips into it. The balance is checked a few times a year, mostly confirm that it still exists. The numbers move, but they move slowly. They feel distant, like weather in another country.
Birthdays arrive. 30, 32, 35. The celebrations are modest, but pleasant. Dinner out, maybe a short trip. Each year, the same sentence appears. This year, I'm really going to get serious about money. Then the auto payments continue. The deposits continue. The responsible saving plan continues. Nothing dramatic happens. Nothing explodes. Everything looks fine. And in that quiet, well-managed life, the line between fine and stuck starts to blur so gradually it almost can't be seen. Time does not announce itself when it speeds up. It just shows up in small changes. The person who once joked about being new to the job is suddenly the one training the new hire. The email signature quietly absorbs a new title, maybe senior, in front of the old one. The salary inches up, not enough to feel rich, just enough to adjust the automatic transfer into savings a little higher and feel proud about it. The apartment changes too. Maybe it's a nicer building now, or a slightly bigger place. The furniture is no longer a collection of whatever could be carried up the stairs. It matches. There's a couch that didn't come from a friend of a friend. There are framed pictures instead of taped-up posters. The savings account graph angles gently upward. Each month adds another small step. The total looks respectable compared to what it used to be. At family gatherings, there are comments. You've always been good with money. At least you're not like so-and-so with all that debt. But while the savings graph moves, other graphs move too. The line for rent drifts upward. Groceries cost more than last year, and mysteriously more than just last month. Gas, insurance. The casual lunch that used to feel cheap now requires a second look at the menu. Outside the app, prices climb in quiet ways. The starter home that once felt within reach moves further down the street and then out of the neighborhood. A friend mentions what they paid for their place 5 years ago. The number sounds almost fictional now. In the background, the retirement calculator changes its tone. When the age is set to 60, the little bar stays red. At 65, it turns yellow. At 70, it finally shows green, but the number beside it feels thin for a lifetime. The assumptions it uses, rates, returns, inflation, are just sliders on a screen. Move one or two slightly, and decades of saving look smaller. Meanwhile, work absorbs more hours. The raise that once felt like a breakthrough disappears into upgraded groceries, slightly better trips, subscriptions that quietly auto-renew. Responsibility at the job grows faster than the freedom outside of it. The email load increases. The meetings multiply. The calendar fills. The responsible plan continues. Save a portion. Spend the rest carefully. Avoid debt. Avoid risk. Be patient. But each year, the gap between the effort being poured into this life and the actual distance traveled begins to feel less like bad luck and more like a pattern. Not a dramatic loss, just a gentle treadmill. Legs moving, scenery unchanged. The cost of that pattern does not show up on a single day. It shows up like a slow leak. Imagine a large, sturdy bucket placed under a steady stream of water. Every paycheck, a little more is poured in. The water level rises. But near the bottom, there's a small, almost invisible hole that never quite lets it fill. Picture a drawer in a neatly organized desk. It is labeled clearly, Future. Every month, something is placed inside. But the drawer is shorter than it looks from the outside, and each deposit pushes something else quietly off the back edge and onto the floor behind the cabinet where no one ever looks. Consider a hallway with a slow-moving walkway, like the ones in airports. The belt is moving backward just slightly. Someone walks forward at a relaxed, steady pace, confident that motion equals progress. The effort feels real. The surroundings change just enough to create the illusion of movement. From above, it's clear the person never reaches the door at the end, or a treadmill in a bright room. The screen shows calories burned, distance traveled, time elapsed. There is data, there is sweat, there is the satisfaction of doing what should be done. The floor under the treadmill, however, remains the same square of carpet. Nothing in the outside world is any closer than it was before the run began. Then the waterline. A person stands on a set of concrete steps in a pool. At first, the water barely reaches their ankles. Each year, the water rises a little higher. Knees, hips, chest. They keep stepping very slightly upward on the steps, believing the height is staying the same. From the edge of the pool, it is clear the steps end soon and the water will continue to rise. These are not dramatic disasters. There is no crash, no bankruptcy, no obvious failure to point at. The numbers in the bank do not vanish. They simply do not stretch as far as they once did. The responsible plan absorbs time, absorbs energy, absorbs decades. In return, it offers a sense of order, of being the kind of person who does the right thing. The invisible cost is not paid in dollars leaving an account. It is paid in the things that never arrive because nothing was ever built to bring them closer. Late at night, when the apartment is quiet and the light from the phone is the brightest thing in the room, the internal script starts playing. I'm being responsible. The phrase lands like a shield. It explains every decision. The skip vacations, the affordable car, the cautious choices. At least I'm safe. Safe from credit card debt. Safe from market swings that look chaotic on the news. Safe from being the person who took a big shot and became a cautionary tale whispered about at family dinners. Risk is dangerous. Risk is what other people take. The ones who either win big or wipe out. The headlines never mention the quiet middle, so the mind never pictures it. Better to stay in a lane that never promises much and never threatens much. Under those lines, something softer sits. A thought that rarely becomes words. If I've done everything I'm supposed to do, why does the future still feel like a question mark instead of plan? The calendar keeps turning. The savings account keeps growing, just enough to remain a source of pride. But the prices outside keep climbing faster. The years available to change direction keep shrinking. There are moments when the thought appears fully formed. If this keeps going like this, nothing will actually be different. It appears, and then it is pushed down. There is work in the morning. There are bills to pay. There is a system that has already been built, and rebuilding systems is something other people do.
The responsible saver continues to repeat the lines that have always worked. I'm not chasing anything crazy. I just want stability. I'll be fine. Fine becomes a word that covers every doubt. Fine, even as ownership is delayed. Fine, even as each year of waiting makes any later move smaller. Fine, even as the window for compounding, for leverage, for actual control narrows while the routines stay the same. On one floor in an office building, there are two people with the same job title, the same salary, almost the same age. One of them checks the account after every payday, moves the agreed amount into savings, and feels the relief of seeing the balance grow. The rest is spent carefully on living. The control is in the tracking. Every dollar is watched, categorized, tamed. The other person also checks the account after payday, but the screen matters less than the calendar. A small slice of the same salary leaves the account not into a generic savings, but into something that sits outside of the job, something that doesn't care who their manager is or how their performance review went this year. The control is not in knowing where the money went, but in quietly adding things that exist even if the paycheck stops for a while. Neither one feels reckless. Neither one feels particularly bold. From inside their own lives, both feel quite responsible. A few years pass. The company restructures slightly. New software arrives. Roles shift. The first person responds by tightening the budget. Tracking becomes more precise. Subscriptions are trimmed. The savings transfer is protected at all costs, sometimes increased. The idea of touching it feels like erasing years of good behavior. Control is maintained through preservation. The second person looks at the same change and adjusts differently. The transfer into the outside thing does not disappear, even if it shrinks for a season. There's a sense that the job is a tool, not the foundation. The paycheck is important, but not sacred. Control is maintained through accumulation of things that outlast a calendar year. From the outside, both still look like careful adults. The difference does not post itself on social media. It shows up in quiet options one has that the other does not. A decade goes by. The same salary band, maybe a bit higher, maybe a new title, but still the same general life.
The first person has built a fortress of habits. Every unexpected expense is absorbed without disaster because cash is available. The savings account looks impressive on paper. But each time the thought of buying something larger, a home, a stake in a small venture, a piece of something that produces money instead of consuming it, comes up, the answer is the same. Not yet. It's not the right time. I don't want to risk what I've built. The fortress keeps everything out, including any path that leads somewhere else. The second person has fewer clean lines in their accounts. Money has been moved, tied up, redirected. There were years where things felt tight, not because of overspending, but because resources were locked into things that didn't pay off immediately. The balances in the main account sometimes look smaller, but outside of that account, pieces began to appear. Shares in something, a property somewhere, a small, unremarkable stack of things that do not clock in at 9 a.m. Neither person is careless. Both can say they were responsible. The distinction has slowly moved from how carefully each one saves to what, exactly, those years of care have been allowed to build. At some point, the calendar stops moving in abstractions like someday and starts counting in concrete numbers. 10 years to 60. 15 years to the age when the retirement account was supposed to make everything easy. The sentences in the head get quieter then. The phone still lights up with the payday notification. The banking app still opens. The same gestures happen. Transfer, check, close. Outside the window, prices on things that were once simple now require planning. A home, education, even time off. The life that followed the rules of responsibility stands in front of a mirror it did not know it was walking toward. The reflection shows decades of doing what was praised, what was safe, what was expected. The reflection also shows how little of that effort escaped the orbit of a paycheck. Some lives, built on the same income, now hold pieces of things that operate quietly in the background. Other lives, just as careful, hold only the evidence of years of discipline stored as numbers that chase rising costs without ever quite catching up. The plan that was designed to protect has kept its promise. There was no chaos, no obvious disaster, no dramatic ruin. It just never opened any doors. And now there are fewer doors left to open. Somewhere between one payday and the next, a simple, unspoken line appears in the space between those two kinds of lives. What if being responsible was never the same thing as getting free?